Psychic powers. Well, psychic powers are of two groups. Basically, we can largely sort of summarize them in two different channels. Those that are born of spiritual practice, usually intense, profound spiritual practice, or even the process of awakening itself, and they're a byproduct of that practice and to be treated as such. We will talk about it later on. Now, and the other group belongs to the so-called gifts being born with. And it is more often than not, people are burdened by those experiences, by those abilities, until they go and find out what do these psychic powers, what these psychic abilities are in the essence. How can they help an individual who is basically gifted with those abilities, as well as how can these abilities be put in use for the others. I mean, the world is full of psychics, like just open the internet and you will see, just type the word psychic and you will have various, astrologists, psychics offering their services. Probably hundreds of thousands. And I'm not saying that all these people are charlatans or con artists. No, many of them are genuine psychics, and I'm sure have these abilities. What I'm trying to say is that it is quite a common today. We are a very, very large community of beings living on this planet now. So in the past, when we were few of us, maybe these abilities were seen as rarer, so to speak. And it's becoming exponentially more common because by a sheer mathematical proportion. Anyway, what is to understand here is that a human being is literally a multi-layered creature, and all these layers are concentric layers of energy. All these layers envelope a being in greater degree, and each layer is progressively more subtle than the previous one. So eventually a human being is enveloped in the layer which is nothing to do with physicality, with mind, with thinking, but we're not going to talk about it because this is something else altogether. The psychic abilities primarily take place in the layers which are related to the pranic body, which are related to the body. I'm talking those layers, the bodies, like there's a physical body, there's the body that made of largely of the circulation of prana, there's this layer that is largely made of the thought vibrations, and the layers that are even more subtle than that, the layers of the intellect, and finally the layer of the bliss itself. This is from the yogic perspective. So the psychic abilities usually fluctuate between the layers which envelope a being and associated to the pranic body and the body of the mind. Nervous system carries the capacity of connecting all these layers to our physical body. And that's why we have these experiences and claim those experiences as being our experiences. We claim them because it's something that happened to our physiology, not to someone else. These psychic abilities are usually happen to people who have a very delicate, often fragile nervous system. It is wrong to think that psychic abilities belong primarily to people who are very strong personalities and what have you. I'm sure one can develop psychic abilities. There are schools of that, you can just enroll in a course and try to tap into that whole energy business and develop the abilities to be able to guide your life from that level. My opinion, perhaps it is beneficial for someone who is already burdened with these abilities and he needs to understand more about it. But for someone who is more geared or more predisposition towards, let's say, finding out the truth about one's own nature, all this could be a waste of time. So, to summarize about the psychic abilities that run through the channel which belongs to the people who are born with those abilities, my advice would be to make sure that you always take care of your nervous system. Make sure that you understand what is the nervous system made of, that you understand that the cerebrospinal fluid that runs in the middle of your spine, it's that conduit of energy. Make sure that you actually feed yourself properly and have a proper rest. Make sure that you practice some technologies of consciousness such as meditation and physical exercises which are beneficial for strengthening the body-mind correlation, body-mind coordination. All this will help. You will be less bombarded with these experiences, and when you have those experiences, you will be able to look into them with an eye of a detachment rather than being smitten by them. Or some people even have these experiences like a form of an invasion into their own psyche. You don't want that. You can live your life fully appreciating the gifts you were born with. However, those gifts should serve you and the others rather than being a kind of uninvited guest, for a lack of a more powerful metaphor. Now, talking about those who have psychic experiences as a byproduct of their spiritual practice, I want to give an example of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. For instance, those who have read the sutras know that there is this chapter dedicated entirely to the psychic experiences known as the powers, or special powers, the siddhis in Sanskrit. Patanjali goes in great length describing all various siddhis. They all have names, they all have particular association, with the process. And what interests us here is that the following chapter, when the chapter on the powers concluded, the following chapter has a sutra which means, literally, those powers to be discarded. And so he goes further to display and to stitch together the knowledge, as we know it today. It's very interesting. Why would he go through all this ordeal of describing these powers only to point out to us that all these powers to be discarded? Well, because these powers can be a tremendous source of the delay in the further expansion of consciousness. Imagine for a moment how hard it is to detach from the habits, desires, and thoughts that we project in that waking state of consciousness, that are associated to the sensory phenomena and to this body. Imagine how much harder it is to get rid of detachment born of the psychic experiences, born of the attachment on the level, when the attachment is on a much subtler level than this physiological attachment. For that reason, the yogi Patanjali advises to keep a cold eye on all these profound experiences, to completely ignore them at best, because these experiences are a source of great hindrance for any particular aspirant who has been burdened with those experiences. And indeed, there are many examples when very talented, very progressive meditators have been arrested at the stage of any particular sort of exhibition of these powers, because when these powers manifested, an aspirant often took the powers for the actual higher states of consciousness, for something which is much, much more subtle, and developed the attachment to those powers. These powers also give a subtle sense of superiority and feed a subtle form of ego, that mechanism where the physical body and the subtle body, just, all of you know that there are different layers to the ego. There are much, much more subtle attachments that are associated with the sense of I than just the attachment with the body. We have to bear that in mind. Just observe, experience, and let it go. Just when you're driving up somewhere in a landscape, you have your particular destination where you're driving to, but, you're enjoying the landscape, but your eyes are firmly on the road. Your eyes are firmly on this whole driving experience. You might look out here and there, but, if you start looking too much outside, you don't want to do that. So